Hi, I'm Doug Wozniak. We're here with another episode of Senior Moments. I'm sitting with Rodney Wakeman from Saginaw, and you're a first-termer like I am.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes.
Can you give us a little background of what you've been doing?
Yeah. Well, I came into the legislature as a business owner. I'm a owner of a funeral home in the city of Saginaw. Been in business license for, this is going on into my 32nd year, and family-run operation and 109-year-old business in the city.
Wow.
Yes.
That's great. What about funeral preparations and seniors?
Yes.
What do you recommend?
Well, one of the biggest things that we get calls about at the funeral home are from seniors and individuals who are working their way into the concept of, well, we have to start planning for things in the end. And one of the greatest components of helping anybody, but certainly seniors, is the actual process of pre-planning the funeral. We get several calls throughout the year on just that issue alone. What we're able to do with them is literally walk them through steps, literally as if a death has occurred, but doing so in a pre-planning atmosphere. They can select all kinds of things, everything from a normal, traditional, everything included service down to just the very basic type of arrangement, and everything in between.
Do you find when people haven't pre-planned there might be confusion about what to do?
It is the confusion can happen. They're then thrust into the mental state that they're in at the time. They're thrusted into this situation of, what do I do? When they've had the time, the hour and a half or so it might take to go through all of the details in a at-need arrangement with their mental capacity that they're at the time, move that ahead a few years, and to sit down for the hour and a half in a controlled and easy environment to then discuss with each of the spouses in front of the funeral director, that process is a lot easier for them. And they're able to more formally understand all of the details that they are leading the conversation about, but we're also then interjecting some very specific things that we might recommend, or things that they may not have thought about to also then include as part of their arrangement. So it does provide a very a good environment for them to do so ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know many times people are trying to plan, or not, they haven't planned,
right,
and then now they've got to think about flowers,
yeah,
scriptures,
yes,
songs, yeah, all that stuff.
Right, and part of our working with the family, whether it's a pre-need situation, which we're talking about, or an at-need situation when they're really thrusted into the situation at the time of a death, we're there to cross the T's and dot the I's, making sure that they're hitting all of the pieces that they need to be considering. One of the aspects that we talk about in both environments are some of the legal matters that they have to consider. One of the details particularly is we discuss death certificates and copies of death certificates, and how many are they going to need, and what we do is we have a checklist that we provide to them either at need or pre-need, and this checklist helps us also ask the questions to them, making sure that each of their areas within their estate matters is covered, so that the individual, the next of kin, or the individual who's their representative with their estate at the time of a death, or the spouse, can actually go through this list, a month or two later after the service has been completed, and be reminded, what are all these death certificates that funeral director got for me? What am I supposed to use these for now? Our checklist actually hits each of the points where they're supposed to be using.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
This may seem like a strange question, but are there new trends in funerals with regard to viewing and caskets and cremation?
For decades, and I'm talking several decades, trends has switched and kind of matriculated through different areas of the population. Coming into this work back in the 80s, and literally living above the funeral home, growing up from the 60s and forward, the trends have have been different, each decade as things gone along. And, certainly right now, one of the biggest trends in terms of people wanting things for their service is personalization. We can do things with caskets, we can do things with cremation urns, the grave marker, all of these different pieces that are out there in front can be shown in an environment that depicts what that person did, either for a living, for their leisure time, somebody who is hunter or a fisherman. There's been all kinds of displays set up inside our chapel that literally was the definitive element of what that person's life was like.
I know when I go to funerals now, I see a lot of video collage.
Yes.
Where people just stand there and look at the whole person's life.
Right in front of them, and they're scrolling on a video monitor, and that has become very populous over the last decade or so, and we embraced it immediately at our funeral home too. We have multiple monitors in our facility as well, and I've seen many of my colleagues use these too. What it does is it's therapeutic. It provides the opportunity away from the funeral home for the families to get together, gather up some of the photos, bring them to the funeral home and say, here, can you put this into a video collage for us? And we do that.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Great. What about paying for all of the funeral arrangements? Yeah. And if someone gives you money, yeah, how are they guaranteed that money is going to be there?
Right. Excellent question, and it's the answer that if the family isn't asking us that question, we are providing that question. They answer that question no matter what. So the point of this is okay. Let's say we're speaking with a family in a pre-need environment. So they come to us early on, well in advance, and they say, well, we want to take care of this. What do we as the funeral director now do with that family? Well, again, we go back to the element of, we act as if a death has occurred. So they describe to us the kind of funeral that they are wanting in the future. And then we lay out the prices accordingly based on our general price list, which is a requirement by the Federal Trade Commission. So every funeral home is required to hand over a price list to the client. On that price list is going to be the prices for all the kinds of different services that we can provide to that client. And then we peel off the charges that are based on the description of the service that they're telling us, and then we come up with the bottom line figure, what everything will be. It is the family's choice to prepay if they wish to, or just to use that as a reference to go on years later when death occurs, but then at the time, if they didn't prepay, they would then have to pay the difference. Now, if in the event that they prepay today for tomorrow's service, for example, it is required that money be kept away from the funeral home. So there's a couple of different ways that funeral homes will engage in terms of where that money is going to be held. As a member of the Michigan Funeral Directors Association, we have a master escrow trust plan. So that what that does is any money that is written out as actually written in the name of the MFDA and sent to and held by that third-party trustee. The funeral home cannot, by law, hold any of that money, whether they're a member of the association or not. Mm-hmm. So the law stipulates that money that the consumer writes that check out for prepayment has to be held by a third party. Another entity that some funeral homes also utilize is funeral insurance. Sometimes it could be a little bit of in trust, a little bit of insurance to come up with the total figure, or one or the other. But in any event, no matter which method that the funeral home uses, at no time is the funeral director going to be holding that money for long term themselves. It has to be either into a trust held by a third party, held into a funeral insurance plan.
Now, last question. Well, in my practice, I know that I get families that sometimes jump the gun, and what I try and tell them is, okay, take a deep breath, go to the funeral home, get all the arrangements set. Don't worry about the house, don't worry about the bank accounts, mm-hmm. the car, or anything until that is done. Mm-hmm. Do you see family members jumping the gun sometimes?
We even take your advice and take it on our end and give it to the families too. You and I are of the same like with regard to, there are some things that you can put off a little bit later. Okay, yes, go through the process, arrange the funeral, have the service, enjoy the time with the family, because you're not going to get that time back. All right, have a respectful service together as a group, as a family unit. In time, with all the paperwork that we provide to the next of kin, to the spouse, after they leave the funeral home, the checklist, for example, is some of the great things that we've been able to provide to them over the years of doing this long enough. That is, it serves as a gentle reminder of they're not going to remember everything that we say to them, nor will they remember everything you tell them either in your line of work. And so this checklist does serve as a positive reinforcement to then eventually start working through the elements of finalizing the estate itself. Deal with the cars, deal with the changing of the deed on the house and that sort, all in due time. Yes, things will have to be done. Yes, names will have to be removed from bank accounts and things right. of the sort. But that's not meant for the day after the funeral. In time, yes.
Today we've been speaking with Rodney Wakeman, current rep from Saginaw area and a funeral director for a long time. A lot of powerful, good information with regard to funerals for seniors. This has been another Senior Moment. I'm Doug Wozniak.